alienation story started in 2009. In 2009, I had just broken up with the father of my youngest child. We call him Junior. And at that time, I was very naive and I had no idea about the law, child custody, anything. All I knew was that the guy I was with was a bad man and it was not my best interest or my child's best interest for us to be staying together. So I asked him to leave. And that was the date, October 23rd, 2009, that started the alienation of all three of my children, not just the youngest one. My first two children were from an ex-husband that I had recently broken up with, but hadn't yet divorced yet. So I was still technically married, but we'd been separated since 2007. And no, actually, I was divorced. 2008, I got divorced. Anyways, I guess that's a good place to start. We'll start there. 2 days after I had broken up with my youngest son's father, CPS came to my door, and I hadn't even heard of CPS at this point in my life. I wasn't sure who they were, what they were doing, and why they wanted any interest with me. But they came to the door and said that I was suicidal and that I was overdosing on pills and that I was letting my son, who was then 11 months, eat Legos. And of course, I was terrified when they told me what they were and what they were doing and what they were trying to acknowledge or accuse or allegedly accuse me of. And then when they told me who was accusing me of this, it totally floored me. I couldn't imagine why the father of my son would want to accuse me of these things when they were not true. And still at that time, I was so naive. I had no idea what he was trying to do. But I think that was stage one of alienating me from my children. That was the very start of doing that. The first phase, going back thinking and knowing what I know now, that was the very start of it. Okay, so literally after CPS had left and we cleared the situation up, they figured out that my ex was just trying to get me in trouble, and they wrote a letter just recommending that we both go to counseling, and that if there was any more false accusations put towards, she would notify the Surgeon General or whatever it is, and put some sort of criminal thing against the parent who was making the accusation. That at the time made me feel like, boy, this is really serious. I need to talk to the father of my kid and be like, what are you doing here? Again, still being naive, not knowing exactly what his agenda was or what he was doing. I was just thinking positive, like, okay, this is just a misunderstanding. I need to talk to him and see why he's having these thoughts and stuff like that. And no, it got worse. Literally 3 days later, I had a police officer at my door. So it was a crazy week. It was like 2 days after breakup, CPS, 3 days later, police officer at my door. And the police officer stated that he had gotten a report that all the kids were running naked outside with knives in their hands. And I was inside overdosing on pills and sleeping. And they were there to do a well child check. And I believe this was so early in the morning. My children were still sleeping, and my infant son was still in the crib. So when the police walked in and saw that the kids were still asleep in their beds and the infant son was still in his crib sleeping, they made note of that. They did put it in the report. And that was phase 2. Still, I had no idea what was going on, and I was panicking. This is when I started to panic, because I knew all the red flags went up. Something's wrong. This guy is attacking me. I felt attacked at this time. Okay, after that, I believe a couple more days had gone by, and my ex had filed a protective order against me. I don't know why. I said that I threatened his life and that he was terrified of me, and that I threatened to bury him in the jailhouse yard. And part of the protective order was he wanted our infant son to be given to him. Uh, but the judge denied that order. So I put two and two together, and I think he was just trying to get custody of the child away from me. And um, that was the first step when things got way, 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 way worse. I began to be very terrified at this time. Like, I discovered that this man was willing to go to any efforts, any lengths to prosecute me to give up my son. And that just wasn't going to happen. I mean, I was going to be a fair parent, I was going to share, and I was going to be a good co-parenter, but I couldn't understand why he was trying so hard to incriminate me and make me suffer so much just out of the blue, just by breaking up with him and using our kid as a pawn to do it. At that point that I determined, after, talking to counselors and talking to friends and talking to my support group, that I needed to get an attorney, and fast. So I did hire an attorney, Woodbeck and Scenarios of Washington, D.C., Virginia. And I remember this day like it was yesterday, because I walked in there and I showed him all the things that my ex was trying to do, and he's like, "I'm not going to take your case. You're crazy." As at that moment, I just broke down in tears. I was like, "Please, you got to help me. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know why he's doing this to me. I don't understand the law." And I was told, because I had gone to several attorneys prior to him, that you were the best one to help me with this situation. And he's like, "Okay, I'll give you 30 minutes to tell your story. And if I feel like I can defend you, I will. If I won't, I'll recommend someone else." And sure enough, his name was John Whitbeck in Leesburg, Virginia. I started to explain what was going on. And he did a quick criminal lookup on him. And he realized that this guy had been like a 12-time felon for drugs, fraud, uttering, burglary, been in and out of jail since he was like 18. And he was in his 40s. And it was at that time where he's like, "Yeah, I'll help you." Because he realized that I was being taken advantage of, and that this poor infant child was in the middle of something that was about to get really, really, really ugly. And as he could tell, like I've been telling you, he could tell that I was very ignorant to the law and ignorant to what was going on with me, and having no clue that this was the start of the alienation process with me and my children. But after that, he did take my case, and I was relieved. That was the first time that I got representation. So, of course, me hiring a lawyer and defending myself exasperated everything. It made everything 10 times worse. It was a couple months into couple weeks into custody, where I was told that I had to be very workable with this man as far as visitation and stuff like that, even though I had this fear because of the prior instances that I mentioned to you earlier about him involving police and CPS, stuff like that, that he was just going to keep the child. And I was told if he kept the child, there's nothing I could do. So I only allowed him to come over to my apartment and see his son, and spend time with there. So this was the first visitation since we broke up that he insisted on after I got an attorney. And he showed up, and my other two children with my ex-husband were going to go to their dad's house. So I said, "You can stay with your son, and I'm going to take my other two children to their dad's. And when I get back, You could tell me how long you want to stay and all that good stuff. So I was doing exactly what I was told to do to be very workable, you know, with visitation and stuff like that, which I was. And he was giving me $100 a month at that time for child support. And as I went to go drop my other two children off with their dad, uh, he took the baby. Now, remember, the baby was only being breastfed. He was 11 months old. And he was still in a car seat. And he wasn't on formula or baby food yet. And he took the baby and he left. He put the baby in his car and drove the baby to his. Okay, so he hijacked the baby who was only being breastfed, and there was no way physically I could get the child back. The police had called the father and said, "Can you return the kid to the mother? She's worried about feeding it and everything." And he said no, he refused. And legally, there was nothing I could do. So, nutshell version, it took 56 days until I saw my infant son again. And it took uh, working and filing multiple things. No matter what I did or what I said, the father would not return the kid at all. Um, and that wasn't the first time he tried to take him. It was just the most dramatic one, the one that traumatized me the most. I will tell you that on the 56th day, when I got to see my son again, all he did was just stand in a corner, and he was very distant and very nervous to be around me. And I really believe it affected him a lot. He wouldn't smile, he wouldn't say anything. Um, it took hours before he finally opened up again, and he remembered who I was. I think he had forgotten. Um, that's how important it is to be in your infant child's life every day when they're young. And I still to this day don't know how they fed him because he was only being breastfed. I wasn't giving him formula or anything. I didn't find that out. So that was the most terrifying torture that I'd gone through in my life thus far. Of course, depression and fear and anxiety was overpowering those 56 days. Not only that, I was so overcome with grief, I couldn't even eat. When I would eat, I would throw it up. Um, I couldn't sleep. Um, I, I was so physically and physiologically tortured because of the baby being ripped from my arms and worrying about him as a mother. Um, so that was the first uh, step that I noticed physically being alienated from my child, how bad it was. But even then, when I went through that, my mindset was like, as soon as if I just get to see him and bring him back home, that's all that matters. I wasn't aware of all these grief and panic and post-traumatic stress syndrome blocks that were being stacked in my mind. I was just surviving each moment. So after my son had recognized me again, um, things were okay. But like I said, that wasn't the first time that the father of my kid tried to take him. There were several other times involving police, CPS, and everything. Um, and there was like 74 court dates of me trying to defend myself and defend my ability to be a parent. Um, the saying is being put through the ringer, basically, while using the court system, the social services system, the police, and the legal system as a tool. And I recall after every hearing, he would walk right up to me. He said, "You know what your problem is? You just won't let me win, and you're going to suffer for it." And that was his analogy, because I kept going, I kept standing up for me and my children, that he said it was going to get worse, and it did. It got worse.